Yeah, we are back, or at least sort of a semblance of being back. I am exhausted. It's been a long few weeks.
Yeah, we've been through the gauntlet the last couple of weeks. Hang tight for the next episode of Behind Closed Doors with the Brooks, where we will talk about the untold story, navigating a medical emergency in Panama, what we wish we knew.
Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Behind Closed Doors with the Brookses. And babe, we have been on a world tour with a mic not in our hand.
That's a good description. Yeah, the last couple of weeks have truly been an adventure here in Panama. Just to give you guys, first want to thank you guys for joining us today. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Also, if you'd like to become one of our day ones, you can join the channel where you'll get exclusive behind the scenes footage from us. And you also get access to us in a group chat specifically designed for Day One Plus members. And so check out that information, but we hope that you subscribe. So let's get into this. So I'm going to give you guys a brief backstory because this kind of ties into some of our previous videos, but there was a chapter 2 or chapter 3. So a couple of weeks back, I got exposed to tear gas here in Panama during one of the protests, which is part of Panama culture. They do protests. And occasionally, particularly over here near the university, the college students will get a little rowdy, and the police have to use tear gas to kind of disperse them. We were riding in a car coming home and basically rode through the tear gas. And apparently my lungs are extremely sensitive, so I had a reaction to that. So I had gone to the hospital for that, got treated for that, had a breathing treatment, got an inhaler and all of that, and was on the mend. That following Monday, I went to the doctor for some other issues and was prescribed a litany of medications. I've shared in the past that I struggle with anxiety and depression, so my anxiety was really high, so they had prescribed me several medications for my anxiety to help me get a hold of it, because after the tear gas incident, my anxiety had gone to 100. So about 3 days later, after taking this medication, I had been on the medication. I already wasn't feeling 100%. I started experiencing some really weird symptoms, some things that I had never experienced before, and it just kept getting progressively worse day after day. And so we returned to the emergency room, and that's where this saga begins.
That's hilarious because a saga it was, and you guys have probably checked out some of the replays and the different things that we've had. Today, we're going to talk about sort of what happened as she was admitted. But yeah, babe, let's kind of talk about navigating not only the emergency room, but particularly the admission process. And just let me set this up really quickly. Guys, today is really going to be designed to help bring you into what could be your experience navigating a Panamanian hospital, particularly the one that we went to. Obviously, we can't speak to every single hospital in the city, but there are some things that we're going to be able to speak to that is cultural related, that is very much Panamanian culture, and you can pretty much expect that. And I think, babe, what I really want people to do is to adjust their expectations. Yes. As you are looking to either come abroad and move here or move anywhere or even just travel in and out of the U.S., you have to understand that the country of origin that you're coming from is not the country of destination that you're going to. And if you don't stop and slow down and understand the nuances, it can jam you up in a real way.
That's good. Those are some great points. And so let's get into this. So we previously had talked about in a previous video in regard to my going to the ER at Pacifica Salud. So this trip, I returned back to Pacifica Salud and went through the ER process again for myself because I have Medicaid Advantage, Medicaid Advantage, I was able to go to the ER using my Medicaid Advantage there at Pacifica Salud. And so the ER visit was exceptional. When you get to the ER, when you check in, they usually there's an English speaking translator that will come and will assist you with your check-in process. We'll go through triage with you. Even when you're back in the back with the doctors, if you want them there, they can be there to help translate. Most doctors here in the hospitals do speak English, so it's more so communicating with the nursing staff, the lab tech, and things like that. But the doctors, for the most part, all spoke English that I encountered. So I didn't have problem communicating with the doctors. And so on this particular visit, I went in, explained to them the myriad of symptoms that I was having, and was taken back, and they began doing tests. They did lab work, they did a CT scan, they did several other tests to try to figure out what was causing the symptoms that I was having. After being there, I guess about 2 or 3 hours, everything came back. It was positive. They couldn't figure, I mean, everything was negative. They couldn't figure out what was going on. They did say they thought I needed to have an MRI done so that they could do further investigation. But apparently at that particular time, I don't know if the MRI techs weren't there or whatever, they were like, well, we're going to discharge you home and you could come back and do the MRIs. Now, that's normal. I'm used to that in the States, because in the States, they probably would have released me to get the CT scan. They wouldn't have even done that in the ER, so I didn't question that at all. Although I still was not feeling well, there was nothing showing on my blood work. So there really was nothing for them to really, figure out at that point. It didn't look like there was anything going on. So when we were leaving, they had prescribed me some new medications to take to help with the symptoms. And we were actually at the pharmacy, and we ran into Mike Kelly. He came down and he looked at me immediately and was like, "You don't look well." I was like, "No, I don't feel well." He was like, "No, you really don't look well." And for me, because we know Mike, he knows me. And he was like, "No, you don't look good." And I explained it. I was like, "Well, they did all the tests. Everything came back. They want me to come back do an MRI." He was like, "Well, why are they sending you home to do the MRI?" I was like, "I don't know. That's what they said." And so he went back and spoke with the ER doctors and explained to them that I really didn't look good. And they were able to readmit me. And so when they readmitted me, they actually admitted me as an inpatient. And so they readmitted me back into the ER and immediately admitted me to go upstairs to a room. This is where things changed. So let me just say this: Pacifica Salud is a phenomenal hospital. I love the hospital. I love the quality of care there at the hospital. But there are some nuances that, as a English-speaking person, you need to be aware of, and so that you can navigate successfully during your visit. And for me, at that particular time, I was not all here, emotionally, mentally. I was having pain. I just cognitively, I was not all there at that particular time. And so there were things that I didn't think of. I assumed that the same care that I received in the ER would be the same when I got upstairs. And what I mean by that is the translation. And that's the biggest thing that I want to point out. And I do want to, I'm going to recant a statement that we have said over and over again in the past. In the past, we have told you guys that you can move to Panama and not know Spanish. I'm going to recant that. You need to know some Spanish. And you need to know more than hello, goodbye, good morning, how to get to the bathroom. When you're in an emergency situation, when you have a medical situation, you need to be able to communicate some basic terms with that nursing staff, with that emergency staff, so that they can assist you. Simple terms like ayúdame, which means help me. I did not know off the top of my, I couldn't recall that, because that was not something I had been practicing. So there are things that you definitely need to know. And if you are not able to, if you don't speak Spanish, you definitely need to inquire whether they have translators available or have somebody there with you that can translate. You got anything for I go on?
Yeah, one thing I do want to add to go back to the point of, do you need to know Spanish in order to live here? The answer really is yes and no. So what Sheri is talking about, you can navigate the city and you can kind of get from one place to the other, particularly if you live here in Panama City, without knowing a ton of Spanish, and you can live here and have a pretty good life. Here's the challenge. The challenge is if you don't know it and you need to know it. And when we say need, obviously you're talking about, a healthcare scare. an emergency situation. So you may have your a handle on Spanish to be able to order food, to be able to kind of speak to the Uber driver, kind of get where you need to be, to find out little things. The grocery store, you can kind of navigate, you can read, you can use your translator. I want you guys to understand that most of those circumstances are controlled. They are not high intensity driven. They're not, these circumstances where you feel like, oh my God. So when you are in a particularly a stressful situation, all of what you do know is pretty much going to go out your head. And so, are we saying that you have to be fluent? Absolutely not. But we are saying that you're going to have to be well aware of enough terms so that what happens when your translator don't work anymore? What happens when you don't have a signal? Those kinds of things. And so we're going to begin, and you got to understand, we're saying this having lived here at the time of this recording almost 2 years. June 30th, 2025 will mark 2 years we've lived here, and we're later, obviously it's taken us this kind of time to learn. So I just want to make sure we underscore that, because y'all will be in the comments so much, you don't know to have to know. Let me tell you something. When you need to know it and you don't have an advocate, you got a problem.
Yeah, that's so true. And so once I got admitted, I went upstairs to a room. Now, let me just share this about Pacifica Salud. The rooms are immaculate. You get a private room. The room is a spacious room. It has a sofa, like futon bed, so your guests can stay overnight, your spouse, or you can have a person stay the night with you. I had a beautiful view from my hotel room. The food, let me say something about the hospital food.
You said hotel.
Oh, it was like a hotel room. It felt like a hotel room, yes. The hospital food, I have never in my life ever had hospital food this good. I mean, everything that I had, I was there for, I think, 4 days and 3 nights. It was not the bland, normal, food that you get in the hospital. The food was actually good. I was actually surprised. The food was very good. Now, the staff were very receptive. I mean, they were very attentive. The challenge was that on the floor, once admitted to the floor, many of the nurses, the techs, the support staff don't speak English. And so we're going to get into what are things that can be done to assist you when you go up on the floor as an English speaking patient. But there were things that I was not aware, services that I wasn't aware that I could have requested. There are also some things that they could have done to have assisted me in that. And that's where it goes to Panama culture. And so Panamanians, we've talked about this before, they're somewhat passive as individuals. And unless you press them to do something, often they're going to do their job, but they're not going to go the extra mile per se. And in this instance, for a nurse to recognize, oh, she doesn't speak English, let me bring my phone as a translator, or let me, as the charge nurse, let's assign an English-speaking nurse, if we have one on duty, to this particular patient. Let me rearrange people to make sure that they have somebody that speaks English, or particularly at Pacifica Salud, let's call the customer service team downstairs and let them know, hey, we need a translator up here to help us when we go to this person's room, so that they could come up periodically if there were things to do. Now, in full disclosures, the translators are not there 24 hours a day, the translator staff of the customer service. And my nightmare began overnight. And so what I mean by that, so that first night I was there, I had a really rough night. And I called for the nurse. Now, during the daytime, it wasn't as bad. Now, this was the first night. We had been in the ER all day. So I told Glenn, I was like, go home, get you some rest, just come back in the morning. I'm tired. You're tired. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to just sleep tonight. They're not doing anything tonight. They're going to just monitor me. They're not going to do the CT scan or the MRIs till tomorrow. So I'm good. We'll be fine. That was wrong on my part. I assumed I would be fine. But so overnight, I had a situation, and I called, you ring the little buzzer to call for the nurse. They respond over the little intercom thing in Spanish. I have no idea what they're saying. I'm in pain at this point, so I can't even think of words to say anything back to them. I'm speaking in English. They're speaking in Spanish. And so it prolonged someone finally coming to my room to assist me. Had I been able to speak in Spanish, and say what I needed so that they could understand, they would have responded much quicker. Now it wasn't a dire situation, but it was a situation, and I needed some assistance, and so it took them longer to make it to the room, and it increased my anxiety, which was the bigger thing because I already was having anxiety, and that increased my anxiety because now I'm uncomfortable. You don't understand me. I don't understand you, and I can't seem to get any help. So, like I said, after that first night, made it through the night, survived. But that morning, when Glenn came, he came, actually brought a friend of ours with him. Shout out to James Rodriguez, who came. And James is fluent in Spanish because he's Puerto Rican, even though he didn't learn Spanish till he moved here to Panama.
Oh my God.
She threw you straight under the bus, James. I just want to let you know. James is from East Harlem, New York, and if you ever looked up the definition of a New Yorican, his picture would be right there. Please continue, babe.
So when they arrived, I shared with them what had happened overnight, the incident that I had. And so James was like, that shouldn't happen. They should have assigned an English-speaking nurse to you. Let me go talk to the staff. So he went out to go talk to the charge nurse. And like I said, James is fluent in Spanish, but they still were not receptive to what he was saying. So we finally got in contact with the customer service staff downstairs. They came upstairs, and actually the customer service rep and his supervisor came upstairs. They apologized, for the inconvenience that I had gone through that night, that, there were steps that should have been put in place where the nurses staff would have known to make sure they assigned somebody, or at least use their apps when communicating with me. And so after that little debacle, I guess, that night, things went much smoother. I either had an English-speaking nurse assigned to me, or the nurses that did come in, they brought their phone and were able to communicate with me using the app. I also, during the day, knew if I needed assistance from the customer service translators, I contacted them to have them come up. But there are things that you wouldn't think of, like in the States, when a person gets admitted to a hospital, they have a communication need. That's something that they asked you in admission. Do you have special communication needs? They didn't ask that when I was admitted. So they don't indicate it, I'm assuming, somewhere on your chart that this person needs communication needs. And so that's something you have to advocate for yourself when you're admitted.
One thing I do want to add right there, really quickly, guys, is that think about it in the U.S. There are a ton of things that should work, that is in the policy, that maybe they are trained, that people just flat out drop the ball on, right? So I want you guys to understand that not all of this is how everything is run. Not all of this is, a particularly bad situation. There are times you may run into a person that's having an off day, right? But what we're trying to help people understand is set your expectation. Set your expectation that you could be dealing with a person who don't speak the same kind of Spanish that you learned. You could be dealing with a person who is particularly not feeling well themselves that day, don't even want to be there. So when you understand that, it'll help you to sort of pump your brakes, dial it back, and maybe go in a little bit more educated. So I want to make sure that that's clear. Again, Pacifica Salud, great hospital, great facility. It's a Johns Hopkins affiliate. We will continue to go there without question. But now it's informed in a way that until Sheri stayed there, we just didn't know what to ask. And it goes back to the whole thing, Sheri, you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And so to go back to the care that I received, so other than that particular incident, the care was amazing. The internist that I saw was basically, they were investigating. They were running every test possible to try to figure out the cause of the symptoms that I was having. I had more tests done in those 4 days than I've had probably in 2 years. But they ran every test possible to narrow. They were checking off the boxes. Not this, it's not this, it's not that. So it wasn't a thing where they're going to just say, okay, well, this is what we think it is. It's not that, and we're going to send you home. So they investigated. It was when the neurologist came. And they were doing a nerve conduction test on my legs because I had lost some feeling in my legs. I was having some numbing and tingling in my legs and some loss of feeling in my legs, and when I would stand up, I was having pain in my legs, and so they didn't know what was going on, what that symptom was caused by. And so when the neurologist was there and he was doing his exam and he was asking me, okay, let's give me the whole story, what happened? And as I was sharing with him, going back to the whole tear gas incident, then going to see the doctor and everything, it was then when I was disclosing to him the medications that I was on, he was like, "Hold up, you're on what?" I was like, "I'm on such and such, such and such." And he was like, "All of the symptoms that you're displaying could be are more than likely caused by the combination of medications that you're on. So we're going to taper you off these medications and see if the symptoms start to subside." So they were able to do that over the next probably 24 hours, about 36 hours, and the symptoms started to subside. So it was a counterindication of the multiple medications that I was on that was causing me to experience the symptoms that I was on. So this is another thing when in another country, particularly I can speak about Panama because I'm in Panama, when you get medications here, like in the United States, when you pick up a prescription, you're getting a whole pamphlet that explains to you all the symptoms of the medication. Your doctors will go over with you when they prescribe medications. If you're taking this, don't take that. If you start to experience this symptom, don't, stop taking it or call me if you start feeling this, that, and the other. My particular experience with the doctor that had prescribed me the medication, I did not get any details on things to look out for. Because I've been on anxiety medications before, I did look up the medications, but I don't know how they work in concert with one another. And that was not explained to me. And so it could have proven to be a lethal dosage had I continued taking it. But luckily, I thank Mike for getting me admitted.
Yeah.
I thank the hospital, the doctors, the internists, and the neurologists at Pacifica Salud for continuing to investigate to figure out what it was. Because they could have just sent me home and I would have kept taking the medications.
Absolutely, babe. If I could jump in just to backtrack a little bit and sort of clarify, one of the things that we discovered in this process is that because of Sheri's anxiety, and I just want to make sure this is super clear, the doctor that she went to, psychiatrist, to kind of evaluate her, look at her situation, look at what medication she had been on. When she diagnosed this is when we realized she has a clinic in the actual hospital, but she doesn't necessarily work for the hospital. And that's another thing I need you guys to understand. Unlike in the U.S., where your doctor is assigned to a particular hospital, there are some people that want to give birth at a particular hospital, right? But if your doctor doesn't practice at that hospital, you should. Here in Panama, the doctors are not assigned to a specific hospital per se. They have the ability to travel and kind of work in different hospitals along the way. So in this particular case, this particular psychiatrist has a clinic in one of the locations, not even the one she was staying at. So when she got seen by her, it was sort of outside of, if you will, kind of the hospital's purview, I probably should say. So that way, when we began to go back and kind of investigate, like who's responsible, and we're going to get into that a little bit. It helped us to understand why this sort of web was weaved in a way that it was. And these are, again, I'll keep going back to this. My hope is that we will help y'all reset your expectation. Because if you come in the door and say, well, it should be, or the way we do, you gotta understand they not like us. To quote an infamous song at this point, y'all, we gotta understand that. And I think that it's that level of expectation, Sheri, that creates even more anxiety and more angst in a situation where you're already hurting.
Right. And so, I mean, like I said, I'm extremely grateful to the staff at Pacifica Salud. I'm grateful for the care that I did receive. The facilities are excellent. The high quality of, my hotel room, my room and my meals was amazing. And the biggest thing I think for me was the fact that they did not just send me home, that they kept, although the tests kept coming back normal, they kept digging until they found out what was wrong. And that doesn't always happen. I won't say normally. That does not always happen in other countries. In the United States, I know I've been in a hospital before for things, and they just send me home, and they'll send you to go do consults outside with other specialists to try to determine what's going on. The fact that they took the time to actually figure out what the cause was, to narrow it down, and then to start treatment for what they believed the cause was, to see if that was the case before sending me home, was tremendous. And I'm extremely grateful to the staff at the hospital. And like Glenn said, I will go back there again if I ever need to. It's not, I did not have a bad experience. I learned some things, and that's, the next thing we're going to get into is some takeaways. And I think we're going to actually do that. We're going to do a follow-up video where I'm going to talk about the takeaways from this visit, the things I learned, and how I will move going forward if I'm ever in that situation again. But just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what's been going on. Give you a little more detail in regard to why, we've had to, we've taken this break. I'm fine. I'm doing much better. Like when I said, I'm probably about 90%, still resting, still not 100%. I still have some good days, some bad days, but definitely much better. And looking forward to getting back completely. I do have some follow-up visits because they're still trying to figure out a couple more things. Now, based on the effects of what happened, and so just working on that, but I'm doing better. And so I appreciate all your prayers, appreciate your support. Once again, if you are new to our channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to become one of our Day One members, please join the page. Become a Day One Plus member. You get access to an exclusive chat group with us. As a Day One member, you will get behind the scene videos, and some other special perks for being a member. We appreciate you guys, and I think that's it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, babe, that this part 2 of this may even be alive. We're going to give it some thought, but I think that might be a good place to kind of maybe talk about our key takeaways and maybe do that. I'm throwing you a curveball, and so we're going to think about it. It really depends on her energy level. I'm y'all can tell I'm feeling getting back in the flow. So maybe not. We'll see what she thinks. Help me. She's looking at me all crazy, like, here we go. But at any rate, at the end of the day, here's what I can promise you. You cannot get to any place of significance by yourself. Why is that, babe?
Because we all need some help.
Help.
Help me.
I need somebody help.
Help
Not
me.
just anybody help.
I need somebody help. Not just anybody help. I need someone.
Y'all be good, and we'll see you next week.